Welcome to Season 2 of You and Me Kid, a podcast about starting and raising a family on your own, where I speak with other single moms, those still considering, and experts in relevant fields to give you a real sense of what the day-to-day experience of solo parenting looks and feels like. So wherever you are in the process, I hope this podcast provides some support, helpful info, and most importantly, humor. Thanks so much for listening. Now let's get to it. On today's episode, I talked to my friend Phoebe, who is an aspiring single parent in the Pacific Northwest. Phoebe is just at the beginning of her process, and we really dig into the financial decisions that she's trying to make around whether or not this is something that she can afford, and if there are some shifts she can make to her career to set herself up more for success as she begins this journey. Phoebe and I also talk about the emotional components associated with this decision and also the grief that sometimes comes along with pursuing single parenthood. I had such a blast talking to Phoebe. She's an incredibly honest and thoughtful human, and I really hope you enjoy our chat. Okay, so just give me your background on how we even got to talking. How did this start? This thinking that this was a path you wanted to go down. I'm so curious.
Yeah, so I guess having kids is one of the only things I've been clear on since I was 8 years old. I remember having this thought. I don't know what it was. It was something about wanting to celebrate all the holidays. I wanted to celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas and everything in December. And I remember being really young and being I just can't wait till I have my own family so I can make those decisions. And I was 9 years old. It's the only thing I've ever been really clear on. And yeah, I think in my dream world, I would have started even younger than now if I'd found the right person. Well, my mom had me when she was 40, and I wanted my parents to get to be grandparents. I wanted that earlier in life, and I like the idea of bigger families. I would love to have the opportunity for my niece and nephew to have cousins. Apparently, my niece has been telling my sister-in-law now, I'm getting cousins this year. And we're oh, really? Where are those coming from?
I love that.
She's been asking.
It's funny that it starts that young, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of was the same way. And I also kind of felt a similar. My parents had me when they were older as well. And it's you start to kind of add up that math, right? Of kind of how much time they'll have with your kids. And that, of course, paired with the really fun just realities of being a woman in her 30s or 40s and what that all means. And it becomes really real really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't grow up with grandparents, really. All my grandparents died by the time I was 10 or 11. So I think, yeah. So that's a part of it. Oh, and I remember dating in my 20s and being I remember my benchmark was is this person going to be a good co-parent to my child? And I'd be nope, we're done. That's the benchmark, starting really young. So yeah, now I'm about to turn 33 in a week. And within the last couple of years, I started thinking about well, maybe by the time I'm 36, I'll think about freezing my eggs, or I'll think about these things just in case. And I talked to a friend who was why don't you just concurrently plan of yeah, it'd be awesome, I'll keep dating, but what if you also just started exploring the path of doing it on your own, not just the egg freezing, but the whole thing, because that's more reliable, successful, and why wait, especially if you
had you thought about that before? Had the idea of being a single parent even crossed your mind?
I mean, I think it was yeah, maybe when I'm 38, I'll think about it, And so that was oh, it's forever away. And then this was within my friend was what if in the next 2 years, you're I'm going to have a child in the next 2 or 3 years. And I was holy shit, it's a whole different way to think about this.
Yeah.
She had not done the whole thing by herself, but she had adopted a child, and so she knew a lot about she's in the foster system, they're always concurrently planning for the possible realities. And so it was just a new way of thinking about it, where it wasn't putting all my chips in one basket or a different one, or just no, I'm gonna hold out and find the person.
And it's, I mean, as now, right, it's if IVF ends up being a way that you go, it's a 2-step process. So you can go through the egg freezing and stop.
Yeah.
Or if you're in it and like in the year it takes, 6 months it takes, right? Like your feelings about it changed, you could just go into stage 2. But I
Right.
think there's a lot of benefit to thinking about it as early as you are. And one of the soapbox things I say a lot on the podcast is like, I wish a doctor had asked me about it earlier. Like, I wish somebody had kind of just brought it up to me a little bit earlier instead of me kind of having to dive into it on my own and like a
Yeah.
little quote unquote late, you know?
Yeah, it feels like very much in the age I am, like in the early 30s, there's still so much pressure and rhetoric around just like, well, oh, you're so young still. You'll find somebody. Like that's all I get told is like, oh, you're gonna find somebody, or like, you're so young, you don't need to worry about all that. And then I'm like, yeah, but then I think about the like logistics of okay, great. So say I meet somebody and then I'm like, it'd be nice to set a foundation before we scramble our DNA and like, so that's a couple years. And then I want more than one kid. That's a couple years. I'm like, the logistics of it all. It's like, I want to start thinking about it now. I don't want the opportunity to pass me by.
Yep.
Um, Not that it's
And
going
it
to let.
sucks that society kind of makes you feel like it's not the right time to be thinking about it when I could not agree more that it is the right time to be thinking about it. So good for you.
Yeah. And it feels like it's like thinking about it and starting to learn more and concurrently plan is like, there's no
Yeah.
risk and
There's no downside. Nope.
no
So
downside.
where are you in the process? Are you just in the like informative, get all the info stage, or have you started any like testing or anything?
I'm like I've gone like a little beyond the info gathering. So I, for the last probably I think it was probably around February or March of last year I started thinking, and then I started listening to your podcast, and then I started reading more and listening to other podcasts. I got on a bunch of Facebook groups, and then I'm like seeing people like really actively doing this. Yeah, I started to think about going down the route of testing last fall, but wasn't sure about insurance coverage. And there was just like, I guess it just wasn't the right time. I just put that on pause. And then, yeah, there's something that really shifted. There were a few life circumstances that shifted recently where I finally found a new place to rent, which has been like a multi-year process because it's just so hard to find around here. Um, and yeah, some things with my job have felt more stable. And it was like something in the last like 2 months has really like shifted, um, I guess, my willingness to explore deeper. So I have my first appointment with Seattle Reproductive Medicine on Monday to just like have a first call. And like that, my intention with them is to like testing and just like see where I'm at. I also got my IUD taken out to just let my body go back to baseline. And that was like 2 months ago. And so, yeah, it feels like there's like, and I've started, I think one of the other things that's been, yeah, I've just started, I have my list of like, who would I use as a known donor and like what, yeah, I've had more conversations with people. I've been like pretty open with many people, not all. Like I've dropped in little hints with some people of like, yeah, in the next couple of years, this is something I'm thinking about. I've also been like very actively dating, and that is both sometimes very hopeful and many times like, this is horrible and I hate it. It's so exhausting.
Yeah.
So kind of like still many irons in the fire, but um yeah, I'm thinking definitely we'll see how all the testing goes, but
Yeah.
thinking about maybe egg freezing, and maybe I've just learned about split cycle freezing and freezing some embryos as like more reliable possibility.
Yeah.
Um and
I have to ask, I mean, you're in Seattle, which I can imagine, I'm guessing is a fairly kind of open-minded place for the most part. But when you start telling people that this is something you're considering, what has the response been?
mostly like, oh, cool. Like not super. Yeah, I like had a little bit of a conversation with my mom, and it was, I think, for people who either have kids or really understand what that process of having a child is like, their biggest concern is like, yeah, the amount of work and labor and not having a person, like the just like concern of you wouldn't have somebody to do it with. And like, yeah, I guess there's still some like, well, just hold out for the right person and all of that.
When you think about it, like when you are considering this as an option, is there anything that feels like you are concerned about, or like questions that you are still trying to solve in your own head to kind of figure out if this is the right time, or if it's not, what needs to happen for it to be the right time?
Or I guess it could be down to two. One is finances. Like, I work in a nonprofit. I love my job. I have a lot of flexibility with my job. And like, I make under $60,000 a year and in the Seattle area. So another progress step I made was like really getting my budget honed down recently to really understand like, okay, am I just like making it up? Am I in sort of a scarcity mindset of like, oh, I don't have enough money to do this? But I was like, okay, I have the dollar amount of like what I would need a raise to even afford basic things, let alone childcare. Whole different question.
Yep.
So I think finances is probably the biggest like logistical barrier of like, which is helpful to know now because it's like, if I wanted to do this in 2 years, I either need to change jobs or like get a promotion in some way or move to a more affordable area. So that feels like some like challenge that also feels like very realistic and very like figure outable in some way.
Yeah.
That's one avenue. And then or like one concern. The other one is, yeah, just the like, I don't actually, like, I don't know. There's part of me that totally can see and want to do it on my own. And there's another part of me that I just see the sweetness in co-parenting and sharing that. Yeah, I just see both sides. Like I'm a real, like one of my first phrases as a toddler was I'ma do it. And I am absolutely an I'ma do it person. And like not having to figure out co-parenting with somebody I could see really loving. And I could also see a lot of grief and loneliness and sadness in other ways. And I don't know if that's just, I'm sure there's realness in both sides and also like story in both sides.
Yeah. What a beautiful way of putting it. I've never heard someone refer to it that way. And so I love that you're thinking about it that way. And I do think there's oftentimes kind of a little bit of grief in this choice for people because it does feel like you're picking this instead of something else. Mm-hmm. I'm in a different spot where I feel like I've just switched the order, but I certainly agree with you. I love that you said that there is a sweetness in co-parenting, and there can be a lot of sweetness in partnership and creating a family together. And I certainly had to grieve the loss of that a little bit as I moved toward this. And now I just see it kind of coming in at a later date, but I'm with you. It's all of the above, right? There's positives and benefits to both sides, and there's grief on both sides, and there's loneliness on both sides. And so I hear you, and that's a much less like linear problem than finances, right? Which feels like math. Let's just do some math. Let's like run some numbers and see when this is possible. And the other side is way more just kind of battling, what's going on in your head and what feels right.
Yeah. And like how to know like when to stop trying, like when to stop or like pause the dating process or the like, oh, maybe this will be with another person. And like, yeah, that feels so sort of amorphous, mysterious, spiritual, just like give it up to the universe kind of question that is harder than just like, okay, in 2 years, X amount of dollars. Yeah. And on the flip side, I've also thought through like, what a beautiful possibility to do it on your own, just like of all the people I have in my life who might have an opportunity to show up in a different way if I were doing it. Yeah, in community, like I'm in a really strong knit community here that I could imagine really showing up for me. And yeah, my friend asked me like, who would you have at your birth, like at your home birth, if you did this on your own? And just thinking through that was like, oh, that's exciting to think about, like if it wasn't just me and my partner, you know.
I don't know if
So
you listened to I think it's the fourth episode of the first season, but my best friend is a midwife and a mom of four. And she said something in that interview, and it was way before I was pregnant, that really hit me, which was in response to what you just said, which is she sees people show up for single moms and parents in community in a way she doesn't see people show up for partnered couples, because they assume they're good, right? They have each other, they're supporting each other, but she is always, I think, really kind of impressed and moved by the amount of support. And I felt very similar to you, Phoebe, before I had Ellie. It was like, I have all these amazing people in my life, like I will be fully supported. And that happened beyond my wildest dreams. But also something you just nailed is that people show up in such different ways than you would think. And I've had folks who I just didn't expect to be in the roles they would be in our life just morph into these totally different support folks for us. And it has been mind-blowing. So I think you're set up to really kind of have some amazing people in your life, I think.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, how did you navigate that second piece of like, yeah, what was that process like for you?
You know, I was not quite a bit. I was a little bit older than you. So I started the process at 38. I froze my eggs at 36. The reason I really went down that path was twofold. One, I went through a pretty serious breakup, and a person that I kind of thought might be moving in that path. And so, you know, very often that's what I hear from people, is that's when it kind of starts. And then I had cancer as a kid. And so when I started thinking about freezing my eggs, it also kind of opened this whole rabbit hole of, oh man, maybe my chances at having a baby are lower than they would be typically at my age because of the chemotherapy. And I'll never really know if that was the case, but it just got me down a path of like, let's just get a whole bunch of answers and do a whole bunch of testing and see what's going on here. And by the time I got so far into that, I was so far in that I was like, let's just do this thing. And I was almost 40. And so it was the age that got me there. But I really wanted to find a partner. I think I kept thinking it would happen. I tried every avenue you could possibly think of. And it felt to me like, you know, the universe or whatever was telling me like, this is not going to work for you right now. Like, you know, I say the apps hated me and I hated the apps. Like I just wasn't getting any positive reinforcement that this avenue was going to like reap any results. And so it felt like the right time. But it was a lot of things in tandem. And it had been a couple years in the making of me thinking, and me, as you said, really struggling with the finances.
Yeah.
I was in a very similar spot than you were financially starting the process. And it got a little darker from there on out. But yeah, it's really tough to wrap your head around the cost and how you're going to do it. And not knowing what it's going to cost.
Right.
It's like also really challenging, I think, for folks like us who are running those numbers.
Yeah. And I think with the cost, another just interesting piece of my job life is that I work a job that I absolutely love in a very obscure sort of field that there aren't other jobs quite like this. And the thought of giving it up is like sort of heartbreaking. You know, the thought of like, I'll just go back. I worked at Amazon for a little while. I've worked in startups, and the thought of like going back to something corporate and like something that would make this more affordable is so, that's not what I want, you know? But
have you talked to your company about it, or is your company like, do you even have relationships like that where it would be in a conversation you could have?
It is. Yeah, it's a conversation I've thought about having at some point. I'm in a team. My team's only 4 people, and I let my team know last June that was something I was thinking about in the next couple of years. But now that I feel much more researched in like, and I have a data and I'm like, I need this much to make this work, like it would be a different conversation. And
Yeah.
there's a little bit of like, yeah, I think I have some nervousness of bringing it up with the person above my boss because of like there is a chance of maybe having a promotion in the future, and it's like, would that jeopardize that opportunity? And
Yeah.
that's something that we have to think about.
Really real possibilities. Have you kind of, I'm guessing it, since it's a small nonprofit, the opportunity to like have insurance pay for this, I'm guessing it's probably not on the table. Is there maternity leave?
Just the like state with Washington State has really good family leave. I think it's like 4 months, maybe.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, there's some like, and yeah, I don't actually understand all of it, but I just talked to one of my friends who just had a baby. There are two women who just had babies within the last 2 years. One of them just had a second, who work at the same organization, and just hearing their experiences, it sounds like they've had a lot of support and flexibility, and like one of them works from home and just has her kid at home with her, and her husband's out, making, is somewhat supportive of like taking the kid sometimes, but my job is more in the field, in the wilderness, on
Got
and
it.
off. A little less strap them on and take them with you. Somewhat, I feel inspired. That's still, I'm grateful to have family members who inspire me that that's possible. But if there was another place for me in the organization, it would be more office based, which would be more conducive for this in a lot of ways, but still very TBD.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny. There's like, I think that you're going about it the right way, Phoebe, which is like getting the right numbers in place, having a clear sense of what this might cost, I think is really fantastic, right? And then at some point, similar to the other kind of struggle that we were talking about, you kind of just have to let it go. Like if you get to a place where this is feeling like the right thing for you, you kind of just have to let it go a little bit in terms of knowing that you're not going to know, and trusting that those coworkers are going to, show up for you in the way that you're seeing them show up for your other folks. And I think there's a lot to be said for having colleagues who have kids.
Yeah.
Where if you're like, hey guys, I got to move a call, my kiddo's sick, having those people be like, no problem. And then they're going to do the same thing to you the following week, right? I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I do think the corporate world, where sometimes it wins in this game because there's better insurance benefits.
Oh, yeah.
The freedom that you have is, I think, can be a really amazing benefit both for you and your time with your baby. Because I really leaned into that a lot in my early days because I needed to sleep. So I'd take her to school and then go back and sleep for 45 minutes, which I never could have done had I gone to a 9 to 5,
Absolutely.
So again, there's like it's constantly me reminding people who say like, God, I don't know how you do it. And I'm like, I don't, like, you do the same thing I'm doing, except you also keep a partnership together. Like I don't have the energy for that. And you don't have the energy for this. And I work for myself, but you work for a company and you have benefits and I don't. Like it's I think at the end of the day, if you just like put us all in a washer, it would pretty much feel similar, I think.
Absolutely.
But you won't know until you know, which is really, really hard.
Yeah. I'm curious if you like what kind of resources you used or recommend for the like questions around what the actual cost of this, aside from the like, I know I have a pretty good sense of what the fertility journey of just creating this small human could look like, but the like monthly.
That's the hardest part. I mean, I think it's like a decision tree, right? It's, adoption is a certain cost. IVF is a certain cost. IVF, if you need just sperm, is a cost. And then if you need sperm and egg, that's a whole different cost. How many rounds you do, everything gets a little bit complex. So if you have a basic sense of that, I think it's really helpful. Your fertility team will be able to walk you through all of that and hopefully give you some information by email also that has the specific costs. So if you feel like you have your head wrapped around what that could be, then that is the biggest leap. The raising the baby thing for me has been a drop in the bucket compared to fertility costs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, 1 week of shots is the same as my child's entire month of childcare.
Right,
Um,
right.
I did a little bit of research about childcare costs prior to in
Mhm.
Boulder. I knew that, again, based on all the answers, I knew that I work for myself, so I wasn't going to need to go to an office every day. So I had a little bit of flexibility there. I knew that my house is way too small to have an au pair, which is by far the best financial choice, I think.
Hmm.
And then I looked into all the childcares in Boulder and I just tapped all my mom friends of what are the different childcares? Where do you go? Where do you go? And everybody knew of 3 or 4 different ones. And I compiled them and then just kind of did some online research. The prices in my world were like pretty similar.
Yeah.
And again, I I didn't go too far down that path because there weren't any spots,
Uh-huh.
right? So like I could have spent a month doing research on childcares, but it's not like I just get to pick one. Um,
Right.
and it's really interesting. I will say this too. I kind of budgeted. I thought about the fact that since I do have a little bit of freedom with my job, that I would only want my child in childcare 3 days a week. What I realized is the only spot I got in all of Boulder was a 5-day spot. And at first I was like, it's fine, I'll just pay for it. But if I don't want to take her 5 days, I won't. And what I've realized is childcare for me is the key to my survival. I have single mom friends who have their kids home with them and they work full time.
Oh my
I
God.
am not, as a human being, capable of handling both those things at once.
Yeah.
And my child absolutely loves school.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She gets sick of me. She gets cabin fever in our tiny little apartment. Like, she is so ready to go to school. She loves it. And so she goes 5 days a week and it feels 100% like the right thing for me.
Mhm.
And for us, that's about $1,700 a month.
Wow.
So I think that's pretty, like, I don't know, I would say on par-ish for
Yeah,
a
yeah.
small city, but there's community daycares. I have friends who take their kids down the street to somebody who watches, 10 or 12 kids.
Right.
I think it's just a matter of looking at all the options. And I would say just tap all your mom friends.
Yeah.
What do they know about? What are their friends like? Go to the websites. And once you start the process to like see if they have bots, but just like pick a number that feels like it's in the middle of all those and prepare for that, unless you feel like you want the kid to be home with you. And that, of course, is the most financially easy option. That was not a fit for my family.
Yeah, that makes sense. I
We
don't
would
know.
we'd lose our minds.
Yeah. I don't I'm also going to be living in a very small situation continually because of the area and the rents and all that around here, but
Yeah.
yeah, I could imagine like the first year doing that when there's a little
Yeah.
less running
I mean,
around.
that's my biggest expense.
Yeah.
So if you can find a way to find it, like get a sense of what that number kind of looks like generally for the type of childcare that would be ideal for you, and then add on to it your healthcare insurance will
Mm,
maybe not fully double, but like add another third is what my experience was. And then I said yes to every hand-me-down
mhm.
anyone offered me. I still do. I don't care if people are cleaning out their garages. Like I
Yeah.
just say yes and I take all of it. And so I didn't buy a stroller. I didn't buy high chair. Like those costs can really add up, but that's when your people show up
Yeah.
for you. And those who have kids, this is the benefit of being kind of one of the ones to have a kid sooner is like they are so ready to get it out of their house. Like people are thrilled to just get it away. So yeah, childcare and healthcare, I think, are the two biggest costs. And then in my most recent stage, at 18 months, I've started kind of budgeting a little bit more for babysitters.
Mm,
So I can, like this winter, I budgeted for 3 days where I could go skiing,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? It's a big expense. But I was like, I want to go skiing with friends
Yeah.
3 times. And so
Yeah.
I budgeted for that. So little stuff like that as things evolve, but that's the biggest piece for sure. Rent, childcare,
Yeah.
insurance.
Okay. That's great. Yeah.
And your birth costs are not mine were not small.
Yeah.
But I have crappy insurance because I work for myself. Another up down to the
Totally.
personal freedom.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've said this before. You've probably heard me say it on the podcast. I waited way too long, Phoebe. I let the financial piece scare me for way, way, way too long.
Mhm.
And that I don't want that to seem as like a white woman boulder
Yeah.
privilege kind of thing. I let myself think that, making 50 grand or whatever I was making when I started the process wasn't enough. And my house wasn't big enough.
Hmm.
And it was going to be so hard. And I wasn't going to be able to do any of the things that made me happy because I wasn't going to have the money to do it or travel. It just hasn't been my reality. We've just taken road trips and gone to stay with friends overnight at their house, which is an hour away. I don't know, you just shift.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing that.
And you shift the way you spend.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
you got to have the money in the bank to pay those bills monthly. So I think you're
Yeah, it seems
thinking
like
about it
there's
all
like
the right ways.
an endless way of an endless possibility of planning, planning, planning. And then I just I also know there's so many people I see in the world and in my life even who are just like, oh, I'm having a kid, didn't expect that, and we're definitely not prepared or thinking for years ahead. There's like so many ways this happens in the world that it's like even
Yeah.
trusting that I know there's a way to do it responsibly, and then there's a way to like over plan and over.
Yeah. You said earlier that you had been thinking of a list of known donors. Do you have some people in your life that you think would
I don't
be open
know.
to it?
I've had one person be like very just like, oh yeah, just let me know. Um,
Really?
but it hasn't been a really serious conversation. That was like kind of a flippant remark after, yeah, at one point. So I don't know. Yeah, there are a couple other people who have been just like, yeah, yeah, who maybe doesn't necessarily want kids of their own, but is open. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very small list of people I'd even consider. And then I'm like, how the fuck would I like initiate that conversation and like what does that look like? And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Very much a bridge to cross maybe soon if I did decide to do like a split cycle and do embryos frozen. Um
And I would say too, when maybe this first meeting isn't the time to do that with your fertility team, but they will absolutely be able to tell you what steps that person would have to go through medically.
yeah.
So when you do have that conversation, which I'm sure if these people are important to you in your life, that it'll be funny and it'll be real and it'll be crazy, all wrapped into one, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of the logistics, your fertility team will really be able to say, hey, here's what this looks like for them,
Yeah.
um, and the commitment that they're making. And then, there's a lot of in the Northwest, actually, lawyers who specialize in this that would be able to kind of help you with that side of things.
Right.
And, lawyers, therapists, fertility, just build a team.
Long little
Takes a
thing.
village.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have there's somebody in a like past community in Seattle who I know who did this. I don't know her whole journey, but I actually I joined a Seattle single parent by choice Facebook group, and I was like, oh my God, I have a mutual friend here. And then I remembered, I was like, oh my God, I forgot she did this like 5 years ago, maybe, or 3 years ago.
Whoa.
There are people I'm excited to continue to like just ask more about their journey and reach out to. And
Where have you, I'm so curious, found the most information? Like what has been helpful for you?
yeah,
Podcasts, Facebook groups, like
yes.
what has helped?
Yeah, this podcast, Single Greatest Choice podcast, Facebook groups. I mean, I remember at some point early on, I tried like Googling things and it was just so not helpful.
Yeah.
There's like so little
That's a
out.
really good lesson for you just in parenting. Never turn to Google for the
Oh,
answers to any of your concerns. That's not where you should go. I would also recommend if you don't have a friend in healthcare,
uh-huh.
specifically nurse, PA, NP, round one of those up,
Yeah.
because the Google is not helpful. But if you have a friend who can answer some basic medical questions,
Totally. Yeah, I have a friend who
or
I
again, a really great pediatrician, which you will
yeah,
have.
she does
Um,
my one of my friends, we went to college together and she just had her first baby and she's a doctor now. So um yeah, I'll be leaning into that. And then I also went through training to be a doula a few years ago. I so that was another, I forgot this part of my journey was when my sister-in-law was pregnant with my niece. I remember picking up the book The Birth Partner by Penny Simkin and being like, holy shit, birth is amazing. And I was just like so enthralled. And I have so many doula and midwife friends, and I just like suddenly got like so excited about it. So I went through my training to be a doula. I got to doula one of my friends' births, and then I just got sidetracked down this other path. So
Oh my gosh.
I love birth, and I love this whole like that has been just something for the last maybe 5 years that's been pretty alive and like, is a back pocket, like could be a career in the future, but I'm not. I watched a friend do it, be a doula as a single mom with two young kids, and it was rough because of the midnight surprise babies and all that. But yeah, so I feel really like I've been able to be really supportive of a lot of my friends in their birth journeys and their pregnancy journeys, and that feels like a good chunk of knowledge I already have, which
Yeah.
is helpful.
I mean, to say that you have a lot of doula and midwife friends, I mean, you're dialed. Like I mean, you don't need to worry about who's going to be at your birth. There's all your midwife friends will fight to be at your birth. Yeah. And there's nothing more fun than having a baby with the people who are either at your birth center, at your house, or at the hospital, and then them having peers who are your friends that are there. Like, it's fun just watching them do their thing. I almost felt like a lot during my birth, I was just kind of like watching everyone else interact.
Yeah, totally.
Just laughing at like them all falling in midwife and doctor love with each other.
That's awesome.
Wow, you have a lot of knowledge of this then, of what this entails and the experience. That's incredible.
And then I mean, like, yeah, I mean, my sister-in-law's a paramedic and just an incredible mom. It's like I've gotten so much like close family, like watching this early stage and like taking care of a 6-week-old, 3-month-old, like being in the baby. I feel really pretty aware in the baby stage. It's like the toddler when they start running around and being wild that, yeah, who knows how that would shape my life and what other support would be needed. And
you go stage by stage and kind of shift what you need and who you need as they grow up, for sure. And I think that also is balanced with what you need. I think what I need as a human in terms of rest and travel and free time and sleep has totally shifted over the course of 18 months.
Yeah.
And it has become kind of a daily practice of mine to just kind of really be checking in on, okay, what do I really need right now? Like, and it might be a nap, it might be a shower, I might be doing great. And what I need is like, to see some friends this weekend and take Ellie with me, or to get outside and in nature and take a hike. But it is kind of a constant thing because it's different every day.
Yeah.
Because my batteries are different every day of like what I'm capable of doing.
And if you started dating again, is that like on your radar?
Good question. I have always been and continue to always be open to dating. I've never like ever closed that door. The door that I did close was apps. I would go through weeks where I would swipe on the maximum amount of people a day just as a social experience, and none of those people would swipe back, like for years and years and years. So it just, the apps were telling me that they didn't like me. Like the apps were telling me it wasn't a fit. And so I have closed the door completely on that side of things. And then, but yeah, I'm always open to meeting someone. I think at this point, based on kind of my time and availability and the other thing the apps did was not make me feel that good about myself. And so I think as a single mom, the last thing I need is anything in my life that feels like toxic or is like taking away any of my strength or confidence. So off with you, apps. But yeah, I've told everyone in my life that, if they know anybody, I will go and meet anyone at any time for a coffee or a beer. And I have a kind of deep gut sense that that's the way that I'll meet somebody. But yeah, apps are not it. And I mean, based on kind of what I just said too, it's not like I don't have free time. You just have to plan a little bit for that free time. And so For me to go on a first date at night, for instance, would mean I would need to get a babysitter. So like I'm never going to go on a first date at night unless like it's a friend of a friend that I think is going to be really fun, right? Because that's money out of my pocket. It's a lot of pre-planning. Or to go to a place where typically, like, just go out to a bar to meet people or go to like an event where I can meet people. It would take so much pre-planning for me to do that, that spending my time kind of looking for someone in that way is not what I do. But what I would rather do is like, you know, a good friend of mine has a dinner party. For sure, I'm going to get a sitter and I'm going to go. And if someone's there, great. But I'm not there for that purpose. I'm there to have like my cup filled as a adult without a toddler, you know, and like with friends around me. So it also kind of just falls so low on the list of like what I have time for and where I want to put my energy at this point. That is the one thing that I constantly have to remind people of a little bit is if I want to do anything on my own, it costs money. Yeah. So, you know, budgeting for going skiing is a significant amount of money in a mountain town to get a babysitter for those times, right? If I want to take a trip without my child, it is an insane amount of money to have a sitter with her. Or, you know, dates, dinner parties, etc. That's, you know, 20 plus bucks an hour to go do something like that. And so for me, it's got to be worth it, and it's got to fill my cup. It's got to give me energy. Those people I'm saying yes to have to give me energy. I'm saying no to a lot more than I did before, you know?
I kind of love that, even as just just like a thought experiment before having kids of like, I find myself often saying yes to things that aren't super nourishing all the time. And it's like, yeah, I love that even as a metric of like, would I pay money to like take care of a kid while I go do this? And is it going to fill me up, justifying that?
Yeah. There's just no, you know, I think one of the downsides, it's like, I can't just leave the baby with my husband and go grab a drink with somebody. It takes so much pre-planning and scheduling to make that happen. And I have two careers, but one of my jobs is a realtor. And one of the toughest things about being a realtor is that weekend time, going to see properties or having an open house. And so I have to be so on top of scheduling and have babysitters who like will answer my call and love my kiddo. And I throw little thank yous here and there because I'm like, I need you on the Rolodex. You are a part of my support system. It's tough, but it just takes, you know, it takes a lot of planning.
Totally. Oh, wow. I really, just all the puzzle pieces, and just that it works. Like the puzzle pieces fit if they're.
Yeah. You know, it's so like more than fits. I think I really expected this experience to be just kind of exhausting. Yeah. And a lot of people in my life tried to tell me like, yeah, but with that comes all this joy and all this happiness and all these like simple moments that are going to fill your cup in 30 seconds in the way that a week-long trip never would have prior to. And I believe them, but you don't know until you know. And I mean, I am so grateful for the times where it's easy and my cup is full because my kid is just walking around in her Phoebe pajamas. And like, that makes me happier than any international trip I've ever taken sometimes, right? And then there's other times where it's like a dinner with friends and her with a sitter fills my cup. And it's just a matter of paying attention to that. But I agree that I've never felt more balanced in my life, which I thought would be the exact opposite. Yeah. And I think a lot of it is like what we were just talking about, like saying no to the things I don't want to do, saying yes to the things I know are going to make me joyful. But there's so much more joy coming in constantly than I had as a single person in my late 30s. So my energy battery might be a lot lower consistently every day, but my ability to just like be happy and laughing is like through the roof. I'm just like a tired, happy person at all times. I should have called this podcast Tired and Happy. That sums up my whole life, I think.
I love that.
Yeah.
But it's such a cool frame. I haven't like heard quite in the same way, because I do see like Facebook posts and have heard a lot about how exhausting it can be and how you don't have a reprieve and you have a lot you don't have, and then but just the how worth it is on the same side of the same coin, you know?
Yeah, and you get a reprieve. You just have to plan for it. And sometimes that means asking your friends to come over and watch your baby because you can't spend money on a babysitter. And sometimes it means paying a babysitter. And then when you get childcare, everything changes because then you know what hours of the day you have to do whatever it is you need to do, which does change a lot, I thought, in my world. Like, oh my God, I can do laundry, like in between calls. Like, this is amazing.
Idea.
Like, I have 15 minutes in between calls. Like, I'm working from home today. I'm going to take a shower. Like, it blew my mind. And then I got what I needed. But I hope this goes without saying. I'm here to support you and answer any questions that you have throughout this process. And I just think you have such a good attitude about it already and such a good, I think, real sense of what you're getting into. I mean, I had no idea what birth would be like. And I thought I did, but you really know what birth is like.
Yeah.
So I'm here to support you, and I think you'll know when you know.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been just delightful.
So sweet. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. For more information about the podcast or me, go to youandmekidpod.com. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you or your company are looking to jump into the podcast world, now is the time. The Plug Agency is here to connect you to the full power of podcasting. You just record and leave the rest to us. The people are listening and want to hear from you. theplug-agency.com. That's theplug-agency.com. Click the link in the episode description for an exclusive offer.